that said, we'll get into the questions. So for networking, I think a lot of the questions always revolve around who do I reach out to kind of create the best impression at these firms? How do I get the referrals? Is there anything that we're doing markedly different with summer 2026 or penultimate summer coffee chats compared to sophomore summer 25, 2024? I think networking also the place it has in summer 26 recruitment, and all the other logistics about the time, how many chats should I have, how long do I wait for the follow-ups, and all that. But for the who to reach out to, the best people would likely be the most junior. And I would start if you're starting early enough. And so for the banks that maybe will be interviewing February, March onwards, you can try and talk to past interns while you reach out to analysts and associates. But the reason why I wouldn't go straight to a managing director or straight to an executive director is because, one, they're likely to just refer you downwards to more junior members, because they don't want to waste time talking to you guys. And plus, from a bank's perspective, you think about, okay, well, who would be the best at evaluating who would make a best investment banking summer analyst, which is like the positions that we're all going for. It would be those most proximal to them in age, right? They know what's going on. They know, just based on who of their peers recruited successfully, what a good candidate looks like, what a bad. And I would say that is different from why these senior employees are the ones who do the super day interviews. They're better at evaluating character in a long form conversation, right? But in coffee chats where they're just fielding questions from students, that's different, right? The evaluation is slightly different. And so they would rather delegate coffee chats and the preliminary evaluation to junior people, but they take charge of the final evaluation when all the candidates have been qualified and vetted by the other employees, by the junior ones. So in terms of who to reach out to, analysts, associates, I would say just go with those first. Once you get 1 or 2 chats with those people, and by the way, a referral from one of them could very well result in a first round interview. At banks, it's different. Like some of them will require you to have multiple referrals. Some of them won't. Some people, you talk to an analyst and they want to pass you around the office. Moelis LA, for example, likes to do that. Other firms only want you to talk to one analyst. If you reach out to more, they actually get mad at you. BDT, MSD would be one of them. Centerview Partners is another. So that's why you kind of have to take it one by one. And that's why you also have to be very systematic in the way you approach networking, email networking in particular, because it's hard to, if you don't have a repeatable approach and something where okay, like whether they are that firm that wants you to talk to everyone or that firm that only wants you to talk to one, rules around, okay, well, max you should only be sending an email to one new contact a week should exist. Maybe you don't do more than 2 emails to a given level in a week. Maybe you don't do more than 3 emails a week. You can do as many follow-ups, but those count as an email. So if it's max 3 emails, max 1 new contact reach out to a week, max 2 emails to one at a single level, based on what I've seen throughout multiple cycles, that approach allows you to maximize the breadth and depth of your networking. And if you just take it as you always ask the same questions at the end of your chats, right there, that analyst, associate, that employee will tell you what exactly you should do, or reach out to more people, or reach out to me back in February. Oh, wait, email this person. So that stuff happens all the time. Have a systematic approach. So does anyone have any questions about who to reach out to? How do we find out which banks like that? The answer to your question is you talk to people there. That's kind of what networking and kind of what the networking game is. Okay, no questions. I'll go to how do I convert these chats into referrals. So, and I think that relates to this question and how do I split my time? Like, the way you convert is by having a really good chat. Now, we have to define what really good means. And I think you have to remember, it's from the perspective of like the employee. Like there's no like rubric for a coffee chat, right? So it's based on feel. And that's why I said, like, that's why junior bankers are the ones in the position to, or you talk to a VP and an associate. I'll count this as the follow-up to the first question. Should I look to talk to a director? Juan, did you ask at the end of those chats, would you recommend I speak to anyone else at the firm? You can go ahead and speak, Juan.
Hey Matthew, no, I mean I talked to the VP of the securities and as well associates. I have already talked to him like 2 times. So yeah, I didn't ask.
Once.
Sorry?
VPs twice, and then associate once in terms of chats.
Yeah, associate twice, and I have the opportunity like to meet the VP like several times, like 2 or 3 times already.
Hmm.
But I didn't ask for a referral to talk to a direct.
You didn't ask, or you did? Sorry.
No, I didn't ask.
Okay. So I would say for the VP, email him or text him or DM him on LinkedIn or something. It seems like you guys are close and had multiple interactions, right? And see, like, just kind of shoot him with would you recommend I speak to anyone else in this office? Because then it's like, it's not a who else should I reach out to, because you're assuming it's a yes or a no. That way he can step in and be like, I don't think you should reach out to anyone else. And if he thinks you should, then he'll tell you who it is. But at least that way it doesn't look like you're presumptive and are being like too pushy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Impact for networking. So yeah, back to what I was saying. So that's why juniors are used. And very good is based on feel, and they have the best approximation of what the sort of average, second year student looks like, one that is recruiting for investment banking, and what, an above average one, firms wanting the above average one. And so it really comes down to your vocabulary. Can you say the right words when it comes to like the capital markets, describing corporate finance, describing deals? When you give your introduction, does it sound professional? And throughout the chat, are you super polished? The questions that you ask and the topics that you talk about, do they seem personalized? Does it seem like you're really listening to them and actually having a conversation? And I know a lot of these terms seem like kind of nebulous, and I'm speaking in a higher level, but that's kind of what the game is. And so you'll notice that your peers with like public speaking backgrounds, or that are very good writers, or that have just been reading and doing a lot of equity research, those ones actually do quite well in coffee chats. But to answer how do you convert, it's a matter of having a good enough resume and having your chat. So you think about the resume score and then the coffee chat score. And so if your resume is below average, your coffee chatting needs to be way better. If your resume is here, the networking doesn't matter as much. You still need to have a chat, but to get that referral from the chat requires less. And then you think about, okay, well, let's say a firm is looking at, like, we have the banks on the one side that only want to have you talk to one person at the firm, and then we have the banks on the other side that will have you talk to multiple. Okay, well, let's say a firm, like, if they pass you around and they're like unsure, they're unsure of you. If they pass you around, is that a sign of them wanting to gain confirmation from the rest of the team? Or is that a sign that like you have already been confirmed and now they're just passing you around? Like, is there still an evaluation at the end? And so go back to having a systematic approach, asking the same questions, and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So the answer to your question is, you'll never know how you got a referral, or if you got a referral, or who gave you the referral, unless you only have one chat. And so thinking, like, coming into every chat of like, and at the end asking yourself if you got the referral is not the right approach. You should, before the chat, you should already be like, have I done everything I can to get the referral? Go in the chat, just like, get in the zone and then move on. That's my big recommendation for networking coffee chatting for penultimate summer recruiting, because you're going to do so many. And the emotional and psychological turmoil from like that, should I have said and instead of like another? That's sort of, I'm sure all of you have been through it. It'll just eat away at you. So did anyone have any questions about that? Just these two. Okay. And you guys can speak up too if you want, or just raise your hand or unmute your mic. How do I split my time? Okay. So I would first go all the way to the end of penultimate summer recruitment and be like, okay, what is the set of firms that I want to get an offer from? Think about that. So you have 10 firms, let's say. Okay, these are the ones I'm going to be networking for. These ones I network early. And maybe, yeah, you put like some sort of boundaries around it. Be like, okay, well, by, at May, these banks will still have yet to hand out offers, based on precedent. So I'm just going to look at this set for now. When I get to the new year, okay, I'm going to look at the new set and just continue to build on that. But if we think about, okay, like the set of firms, we have 10 of them. If we work backwards from the point at which is like when the first interview comes out. So let's say it's January, okay? So the answer to your question is, how do I split my time, is do enough networking such that you can hit and get referrals and get chats at all of those 13 firms. And then with whatever you have left, that's all you spend on recruitment. Technicals, mock interviews, behaviorals. And if that requires, you know, that you fill out your day, that you fill out your day. And this is why this next term and these next 2 months will be really, really busy, is because, you know, I was telling you about the systematic approach, but what if you don't get chats? What if no one is responding to you? Well, you're gonna have to email even more. Maybe you increased. Yes, you're gonna risk like maybe making a sour impression, but you got to get a chat some way. Or maybe you miss out a firm when at the outset of your kind of recruitment planning, and you're like, shit, I got to network with this firm. And you know what I mean? So networking for you guys, unless like you already have a Morgan Stanley investment banking internship, you have to get a chat with at least one person from the firm. And so if you've done that, you get the chat, you ask at the end of the chat, what else do I do? They tell you, okay, you don't need to talk to anyone else, or you talk to more people. You do that very thing. You do that for all firms. The time you have left, rest of the stuff, interviews, answers. Yeah. Anyone have any questions about that? Okay, perfect. So next two, how do I get better? How do I have proper networking? Like, okay, if you can, try and ask someone in your school, maybe a friend of yours who's better at recruitment, or maybe you get a friend to ask another friend of yours, maybe they record their coffee chat. But the best way to understand how do I improve, like, because there are so many things, or coffee chats involve so many social cues that you don't even know about. And a lot of the time, and this is why international students have a lot of trouble with networking, is because the social cues that you learned when you were growing up are different from ones in like Canada or in the US. And because they read it differently too, maybe the stuff that you do is pissing them off. Now, I know it's not that severe, but just from the student chats that I have listened to, you know, it is different from like someone who grew up in Canada, someone who grew up in the US. So the fastest way to understand that is to listen to, you know, someone who's been recruiting for a while, who has had referrals before, landed good internships, or certainly better internships than you, and do that. But really, in terms of like how would I describe the best chat, I know many of you have probably heard this so many times, but it's first 5 minutes, small talk exchange, teammate exchange or intro exchange. Coming out of that, but you should be talking about their journey. In their teammate, they list a timeline. Right? So it's like, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. Come out of your teammate, because or come out of their teammate, because you're usually going to introduce yourself first, and you should catch the end of the small talk. You know, when you meet someone new and like you're doing small talk, it kind of dies toward the end. Step in there, catch it. Hey, thanks again for taking the chat. Intro yourself. Pass it back to them. They'll end probably at where they currently are in their professional journey, and then you walk them back and start, okay, tell me about school, right? Because you get personal. You don't want to just focus on the job straight away. So you come to that, you follow their timeline, maybe talk another 10 to 15 minutes. I would try and get to the 20-minute mark, because any lower may just seem like you don't know how to coffee chat, you don't know how to sustain the conversation. But if it's really dry and like they're not giving you much, you can just transfer over. But at the 20-minute mark, you give the following words. Hey, Bob, just want to make sure you had more time today. Thank you again. But I just want to make sure you have time for a couple more questions, Bob. Thank you again for taking all the time. They'll be like, yeah. And then you move on to the recruitment questions. 3 questions to ask at the end of every single coffee chat is, so then you've listened in the coffee chat, they've said, you probably asked about their firm, and you should be, because you should be getting why this firm ammunition as you talk to them, you know, all the stuff, the culture they're learning. Get their words, get their adjectives, how they describe the firm, because that's probably how the people inside the firm describe the firm. And if you can say that in your first interview, you'll do fine. But having listened to that, you repeat those words back to them. Yeah, so Bob, thanks again for taking the time. And you know, all that you said today was, you know, really, really interesting, and definitely confirmed a lot of, you know, the opinions I had coming in from what I've heard from like other interns, other people in my school. You know, specifically, you know, I think the development you've experienced and being there is really something that I like to replicate in the first years of my career. And so with that said, would you have any advice for best positioning myself for an interview? Listen, okay? And they're gonna give you maybe probably bullshit advice, and then like, thanks for that. But like specifically, what would you be doing on a daily basis? So you get their kind of like daily routine, and you're diving in a bit more. Okay, great. Thanks for that. And I think another thing the thing that I think would be really beneficial would, getting another perspective on the team. So would you have any recommendations for other people that you think I should reach out to? So other people I should reach out to, then kind of like wait a bit. And if they don't jump in immediately, then you can like almost kind of get around their hesitance to do that and be like, happy to just grab their if you can just tell me their emails right now, I wouldn't want to add, any more to your current workload, right? Make it easier for them to give you a thing. Boom. Okay. Last question is, and so I think besides that, if this is something you can disclose, would you have any information you can provide about, the recruitment process or the interviews at your firm? 3 questions. People, the general advice, people to reach out to, that's the networking instructions that you're going to get from them. And the third is just like general info that might be helpful and gives them like kind of that last chance to say anything. And usually there, right, if you get a referral, don't bank on it. But if you get a referral, usually they say something like, when you ask them that question, yeah, for sure, like just reach out to me when you submit the application, or yeah, sure, just reach out to me like at this time. So those are kind of the ways to always have a proper coffee chat, assuming you do those things. That's how I would do it. And how to get better is listen, do more coffee chats, and to the extent that the weaknesses in your coffee chat come from just a lack of familiarity with the capital markets, with all these technicals, M&A market, you got to read more, you got to study more, and you have to write more. Honestly, if you think about it, like if you get better at speaking about the capital markets generally without actually having put any intent into that, like, oh, I want to get better at speaking about the capital markets, typically it just comes from like generally reading things, right? Not a very targeted approach. And so if you target and you concentrate on just writing and speaking really, really well, then you'll get better at coffee chatting faster. So any follow-ups to those things? Okay, perfect. Best time, this one is quick. Like you're gonna hear a variety of things. I found the most success with around 9 to 10, like 9:02 to like 9:16 a.m. With my emails. That's East Coast and West Coast. And you should be replying to their email, setting the calendar invite, following up as soon as possible. Like reply within the minute that they reply if you can. However, it changes for a coffee chat thank you. Or, okay, gotcha. Perfect. I'm just gonna finish this one up. It changes for a coffee chat thank you email or an interview thank you email. Do not email them that or right after the interaction. I know some people have it drafted up while the coffee chat is there, and then once they get off with all the insights gained, they immediately fill out their coffee chat thank you email and then schedule it for a couple hours or one day after. And I recommend that minimum wait time be 4 hours for both coffee chat and interviews. But everything else, do your best to get it answered like on the spot. It also increases the chances that you actually get the chat done, because typically you email them, they email back, then you have to like decide on times, get availabilities, which is why I recommend adding availability in your first email. You say you're happy to work around their schedule, and you also add your availability, general availability. It just helps people you're gonna have like triangulate when you're free, because it's like they see an availability of yours, they kind of know theirs generally, and like, okay, it matches up, they just reply immediately. I forgot where I was going with that. Most people, yeah, but best times in the morning, interviews and coffee chat thank yous, wait until at least 4 hours after. Juan, do you recommend asking technical questions in coffee chats about the deals the company has done? So yeah, definitely don't ask breaking the Wall Street technicals. But I get what you mean about like the deals and stuff. It's a difficult question because you don't want to force the conversation, but at the same time, you almost want to give yourself the space to show that your knowledge about these things. And so the way that I would do it is ask a question that gives them the opening to talk about their deals and talk about their fate, like their most enjoyable kind of deals or work at the firm. But
Hi,
if they
Jeff.
don't,
Hey, what's going on?
Doing good.
if they don't seem to bite, then just move on and don't worry about it. And I would say, trust your gut. Like in that situation when maybe you give them the question and they don't buy it, you're kind of like, okay, wait, maybe I didn't show it explicitly enough. Trust me, it's not that. They see it coming, and they know. So if they don't buy it, just move on to other topics. But the way the question I would ask is like something like, talking about, you would have talked about their school a little bit and recruiting, then you would have gone into the firm, and maybe you can open the question about the firm like, hey, and so just shifting gears towards your current role. I've seen you be there for about 10 months now, and I know those first couple of years are certainly like more demand, or like I know that adjustment during those first couple of months is really rigorous. But during that time, I guess like, what are some of the best moments been at the firm? Have there been any deals that you got a particular that you had in particular amount of responsibility on? So that's sort of the question I would ask. And they can talk about deals and think about other things. And if they want to evaluate you and kind of see your and they're treating you like a serious candidate, they could very well talk about a deal. But yeah, does that make sense, Juan?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. Email after 1 day with not increased chances of being ghosted. A thank you email? I mean, like a thank you email, like assuming that you're saying thank you in the email, not getting a reply to it is almost expected, right? So by ghosted, it's like, does that even matter in this situation? Like, does a thank you to your thank you email? You know what I mean? So the point of sending the thank you email is to show them that you care. And the criterion for that is just sending the email. Whereas the criterion for networking is getting the coffee chat. So, okay. Optimal strategy for talking about building with senior bankers. That's a good question. Actually, it's a pretty smart one too. I would say having talked to people at the firm, juniors first, you would have gained a fair amount of background information about that firm. So talking to them, increased response rates comes from talking to juniors and mentioning those various juniors in the email you send. You rationalize why you're reaching out by, hey, having talked to these people, I love to gain perspective, or I love to gain a different perspective on the firm. Now they can't forward you down because they know people that they've talked to you. So either now, like they either say they don't reply or they take it. Now, if they take it, understand those chats tend to be very, very dry. It will either be something like they dominate the conversation or they don't. And they really give you nothing. So you got to come to that chat ready for either. And if like the best way to be talking about their career, their deals, ask for their advice. Like think about like you just want to pay them respect because kind of like us in university, very proud of our career accomplishments, right? Now think about, dude, when your career has been the last 30 years of your life, of course they're proud of that stuff. So you want to ask them about it. So that's the way I would do it. And having a high level of familiarity with their background, with the deals they've worked on, with their career path, and being very respectful when you come to that chat, I think is the best way to build a connection. Most senior bankers won't give two shits about you. And so connections to them don't really matter, right? To them, it's like, bro, you haven't even gone into investment banking. Why should I care about you? Right? You see what I mean? But once you're in your firm, then it's like, okay, he's made of a little different stuff. He's kind of like me. And that's when you can build a connection. So you're not really going to get two good connections. And as it pertains to like super day positioning, they're like learn about their background and take those notes. And then when you can get into the super day, you bring those notes back up and you ask. I remember there's an executive director at Moelis who I talked to. He told me about his girlfriend on the phone, like why he went to LA. He had worked in Toronto. No, he didn't just tell me about his girlfriend, like out of nowhere. Worked in Toronto, then moved to LA. And then he was talking about his whole journey. When I got to the super day, I asked him about like all the different specifics of that journey. And it was like 30 seconds in our chat. It was like I had those notes. So just remember that. Okay, I'm gonna just keep going. If I see questions pop up, then I'll stop. Fastest way